Hey, everybody, it's Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 215th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We are just delighted to have everybody with us. It's March 10th. We're starting with 66 folks, and we got a very full agenda, a beautiful one. Today, we're going to start talking about this insane notion that Trump has of resuming atmospheric bomb tests. I mean, oh my God. We can talk about Ukraine. Then we're going to honor in the second hour, we're going to honor Joel Siegel, who is still with us, and we're going to have an organizing session around his great life. We're going to talk again about doing a better job of keeping people active after these big rallies that are already starting to pour in. That'll be at 3 o'clock and 3 o'clock Pacific time. And so we're really going to get to the core of organizing in today's world. And as I say, we're going to have a discussion about Ukraine and so much more. If you're coming in with us, we are because of the threat of getting Zoom bombed, Zoom bombed. We are not having videos. Your video will not show up. And I don't know if you can see anybody actually. A couple of people are video opened because they showed ID, but here we are. But it's a great thing to have so many of you with us today on February 10th. We're going to start, as we so often do, with a poem from our lovely, wonderful poet laureate sitting on her living room porch in Portland, Oregon, Mimi German. And then we're going to go straight to talking about the bomb tests, which is absolutely unbelievable.
And it's March 10th today.
Oh, sorry, March 10th. And what year is it? Let's see. Oh, 2025, year of our Lord. All right, everybody. Mimi, let's rock and roll. Thank you so much for coming with us.
All right, it's good to be here, and it's good to be here with so many anti-nukers who have in part been my teachers over the years. This poem is called On the Bridge, and it's from my second book called Where Grasses Bend, and I brought it out because of the state we're in. On the bridge, saints hustle sky for real estate. Jumpers cast off into the reflection of the gray warbling sun. Yesterday's moorings were impounded, and circumstance tangos on the ringlets of a slippery deck. Aces are spades, and queens are rooks, and kings, well, no one ever needed a king. Oh, the upturned wind, sidewalks root the footsteps of the dead. The ghastly weed of history ties its knots to clouds, diaphanous and free.
Wow, unbelievable. I want to change your name to Diaphanous. Is that good?
You can do that.
It's a wonderful word. What a great word that is. Okay.
Here's to no kings. Let it roll.
That's Mimi German. Thank you so much for coming with us. We have 80 some people with us already, and we're going to talk now to begin with. We have the great Karl Grossman with us and Joe Mangano. Are you with us, Joe Mangano? Can you pipe up? And we have Bob Alvarez with us. I hope Joe's not having trouble getting in. But in this insane Project 2025, they discuss resuming atmospheric bomb testing. I mean, this is, tantamount, of course, to global suicide. And they appear to be serious. There's no sane reason on any way, shape, or form for testing nuclear weapons, well, for having them at all, but for testing nuclear weapons in the atmosphere or even underground. We banned the United States with Jack Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev banned atmospheric testing in 1963. And unfortunately, they failed to come to agreement. And I've unmuted Karl Grossman, who
Slogo, sorry. Joe said in the comments that he is also muted and needs to be unmuted.
Okay, Joe Mangano, can we unmute Joe Mangano, guys? Thank you so much. Thanks for that, Mimi.
He's
So,
a co-host, so he
okay,
should be able
Joe,
to
you
I
should
can
be
take him off
co-host.
and put him back on again. I'll see if that helps, but he should be able to do it now.
Okay, Joe Mangano, glad to be with you. This will be a challenge because we can't see people, but Joe, when you get on, pipe up, please. So, one of the reasons, by the way, that Jack Kennedy agreed to the atmospheric bomb test, and this is a very famous moment in history, actually, and it's definitely verified. He and his wife Jackie, she had a miscarriage. They had a boy born named Patrick, and he died in 2 days from classic symptoms of poisoning from atomic fallout, as Carl well knows, and Bob Alvarez, who's with us, well knows, and Joe Mangano, which is that his lungs were undeveloped. And when you have atmospheric bomb testing, one of the side effects or impacts is you have fallout from iodine 131, which is radioactive iodine, and it crosses the placenta and goes into the lungs of the fetus and causes the thyroid, and it causes the lungs to be underdeveloped, and therefore the child can't breathe and passes away very quickly upon birth. And that's what happened to Patrick Kennedy. Jack and Jackie's, I guess he would have been their third child. And Jack Kennedy was deeply affected by this, as you might guess. And apparently, according to some accounts, he stopped fooling around. We all know about Jack Kennedy's sex life, at least what we think we know. And it did cause tension with his wife, Jackie. And when they had this miscarriage, apparently they really bonded in a different way than they had before. But Jack Kennedy had read, or there were demonstrations, and he got the notion, which is correct, that the bomb testing. Hi, Joe. Great to have Joe Mangano with us. Hi, Joe.
Hi, everyone.
The bomb testing could have caused it's called hyaline membrane disease. It could have caused the underdevelopment of his unborn fetus, which then died, at birth within 48 hours. And there was a legend, and it's true actually. Jerome Wiesner was the name of the president of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And he was a science advisor. I think Jack Kennedy's chief science advisor. And they were standing in the Oval Office. This is in Wiesner's autobiography. They were standing in the Oval Office, and it was raining. And Kennedy turned to Wiesner and said, could there be fallout in this rain that caused the death of my son? I mean, what a moment. And Wiesner said, absolutely, yes. And that was a major motivation for Jack Kennedy agreeing with Nikita Khrushchev to stop testing nuclear weapons in the atmosphere. And I would venture to say that many people on this phone call are alive today because the testing stopped and the fallout was not pouring down after Jack and Nikita signed the 1963 limited test ban. As I say, unfortunately, they did not agree to stop underground testing. And that proceeded until 1991, when George H.W. Bush 1, agreed to stop underground testing. And then Clinton, with a lot of pressure from Greenpeace and other organizations, agreed to continue that ban. And so we have not had nuclear tests since 1991, and not in the atmosphere since 1963. That is 62 years. And now I can't even begin to characterize the mindset of anyone that would seriously consider resuming blowing off nuclear weapons in the atmosphere. Now, we have three great guests on this. First is Robert Alvarez. And Robert, I want to honor Robert Alvarez as really the godfather of the modern radiation and health movement. Bob was the chief aide on health issues to Senator John Glenn, who was a great senator, by the way. And he was responsible. Many of you have read the book Killing Our Own, which I co-wrote with Bob in 1982, which is the first real catalog of the damage done by atomic radiation in the United States and around the world. And Bob really should have been listed as the prime author. He was really responsible for what we know about radiation and health, and is a great, great pioneer and really a national and global hero. So, Bob, it's an honor to have you on with us. We also have Karl Grossman, who's been one of the great founding leaders of the No Nukes movement, helps stop the Shoreham reactor on Long Island from going fully radioactive, and has been just had astounding impact throughout his great life as a journalist. He's a professor of journalism at SUNY, it's in Stony Brook. No, that's not your school. What's your school, Carl?
Old Westbury.
Old Westbury on Long Island, and I've had the honor of riding on your sailboat, which was one of the great moments of my life. And thankfully, riding in Long Island Sound, we did not have to worry about radiation from Shoreham, largely thanks to you. And then we're joined by Joseph Mangano. Joe has had an incredible career doing the epidemiological research on the health impacts of atomic radiation with enormous impact and ongoing. It works really hard. And you guys have successfully recruited Alec Baldwin and Christie Brinkley to join in the movement and to stop, prevent so much else, but also to prevent atomic testing now. Joe, you co-wrote an op-ed with Christie Brinkley. I think I sent Steve the link, which we could put in the chat or show it up there. Joe, do you want to start by talking about the insanity of atomic testing, and then we can talk about what we want Bobby Kennedy to do in terms of epidemiological studies that his uncle Ted was unable to do. We have 104 people with us. Joe, go ahead, please. Joseph Mangano.
Thanks very much, Harvey, and hi, everyone. Harvey, do you want me to, after I talk about the bomb tests, do you want to open it up for discussion, or should I cover both?
Yes, let's do that, and then we'll talk about the Kennedy situation.
All right,
Go
give me
ahead.
about 5 minutes or so. I know a lot of people
Please,
have
yeah. Well,
thoughts
it's a very big deal. I can't even begin to say as a historian the negative monument it would be if atomic bombs started blowing off again in the atmosphere. It's incomprehensible.
Well, like everyone on the call here and many others, in the last couple of years, we've seen relations between the U.S. and Russia and China go downward. And just several years ago came the word that each country was taking steps to prepare their bomb test sites, including the Nevada test site, for resumed testing. There was an article in the New York Times. The author is Bill Hennigan. The date was last June 20th about bomb testing, and Hennigan says specifically that they were building new tunnels and new roads, and obviously putting in new equipment to prepare for these tests. So it's been bugging me for a while, but what put me over the edge just recently was on our Facebook page, Bill Smirnow, who's a colleague of ours for a long time, put up this link to a report done by the Heritage Foundation. I think everyone here probably knows what the Heritage Foundation is. You could call it a think tank. It's very conservative and right wing. And the article talked about resuming bomb tests. And in the middle of the article, the author, and I forget his name now, but you can easily Google it, said that one option would be if testing resumed and the Nevada test site could not be prepared within 1 year, it would be an option to test bombs above the ground. Okay, and he followed that by saying there may be some short-term negatives to it, but it would make us in a stronger position. And that's I think you can understand that sort of set me off. Like if anyone on this call knows of anybody who's ever seriously proposed above ground testing as an option, then maybe they can put it in the chat room, because I've never heard of such a thing. And I've asked people, no one's, for the last 60 plus years, we haven't heard about this. So what I did was I contacted Christie Brinkley. She's a longtime activist and a longtime supporter of ours. She's been on our board for a long time, and asked if she would write an op-ed, and she agreed. I helped her. Bob Alvarez helped as well, and we peddled it to several newspapers. We got turned down by the New York Times, Washington Post, and St. Louis Post-Dispatch. And I tried the Kansas City Star, and the fourth time we were successful. And the Star published it last Monday, the 3rd of March, and not just in their paper, but they're a member of the McClatchy group, which owns 30 newspapers in the U.S. with a 1.6 million circulation on an average day. So all of those newspapers ran it as well. And
Wow,
it's
good
now
for you. Good for you.
Ye-
That's a major accomplishment. We put it up. Steve Caruso was good enough to put it up at the freepress.org, so it's online through there as well.
Yeah, and it's on our website, radiation.org as well. It is a big deal because it's getting tougher and tougher to publish op-eds, but that's another story. Anyway, what I will throw into the conversation here that comes from our group, RPHP, is as I think you all know, the bomb testing was a above the ground was a terrible thing for humanity. I mean, the yield of all the above ground tests was equal to something around 29,000 Hiroshima bombs. Okay, if you take all countries put together.
Well, that's because a lot of the bombs they were testing were like an order of magnitude larger than the bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah, they were, Harvey. And of course that raises the question, what did this do to people? Years ago, starting in 1958, a historic study by St. Louis scientists and citizens took the first step. They collected 320,000 baby teeth, okay, from children, mostly in the St. Louis area, but from all around the country, and even in foreign countries. And they tested the teeth in a lab for the levels of one of the 100+ chemicals, radioactive chemicals in the fallout clouds, strontium-90. And they found that as time went on, the levels soared. In fact, just as a treaty was signed, the average strontium-90 in St. Louis baby teeth was 63 times higher than it was in 1950-51, before the large-scale tests, which is staggering. They took the results, they published it in a number of medical journal articles, and sent the results to Jerome Wiesner, who, as you said, was JFK's chief science advisor. And Wiesner, we know that Wiesner spoke to JFK about it, and we even the author of the first article, the son of the doctor who wrote the first article, Eric Rice, was a child at the time. He was 9 years old, and he swears up and down that one day at his home, the telephone rang and he picked it up and said, Rice residence. And the voice came back, hello, this is John Kennedy. Can I speak to your mother, please? He has no no evidence beyond that, but he has no real anything to gain by saying that. Anyway, that the St. Louis Tooth study helped speed the test ban treaty, which, as you said, was an enormous, enormously important treaty, not just for peace but for public health, because strontium-90 in teeth, fell by half within the next 5 years. So that was the end of the study, we thought, and our group knew about the study and was inspired to do our own baby tooth study of strontium-90 near nuclear plants, which we did 15, 20 years ago. What I'm leading up to is one day in 2001, I got a call from one of the people at Washington University in St. Louis who worked on the original study. He was a member of the biology department. And he said that he and his colleagues had been out looking for storage space for the university. And they went to this area near about 20 miles from St. Louis called Tyson Valley. It was a World War II gunnery range. It was like you can imagine just a bunch of cinder blocks, kind of musty cinder blocks. And he said, Joe, I found teeth. I said, what do you mean teeth? From the original study. I said, oh, didn't know there were any left over. We didn't know either. It turns out of the 320,000 teeth, 100,000 were never tested. They stopped the study once the test ban was signed, once they saw the levels going down. And he said, we've been looking all over, but no one seems to need to use the teeth. We were going to throw it out. So we called Barry Commoner, a distinguished biologist who was instrumental in the study. And he said, well, I have no use for them, but why don't you call Mangano's group? They're working on the study. So the university donated the teeth to us. Fast forward here. Our role is not to do what they did in St. Louis years ago. We know that the levels soared before the ban and declined after the ban. What we want to pursue is to find out what was the impact of bomb fallout on the risk of cancer later in life. And sure enough, there are 100,000 teeth from 55,000 people. We have partnered with Harvard University School of Public Health, one of whose faculty, Mark Weiskopf, is a neuroscientist and works with baby teeth a lot. He got a large grant from the NIH. And put our group, RPHP, as a contractor, and entered, and he paid for the data entry of information on each one of those 100,000 teeth on the tooth and the person. Now Harvard has gone and identified, has asked the Federal National Death Index to identify which of these tooth donors, who are now mostly in their 60s, some in their 70s, have died. And he has now received a list of between 5,000 and 6,000 people. Here's what we're going to do.
You are going to add to the study now of the impact of atmospheric test fallout. And is that correct?
That is it, Harvey. We're going to test strontium-90 in tooth donors who later died of cancer and compare it to strontium-90 in teeth of those who are still alive. We've already started with a small study of 60 teeth. 20 of those who died of cancer, 40 of those who were alive and healthy at age 50.
Wow. Well, good for you.
Strontium-90 in the cancer group was more than double of the healthy group. That's just it, and we published it in one of our medical journal articles.
So you appear to have solid evidence then that there is a link between strontium levels in the teeth that could only have come from bomb fallout and early death. from
That
cancer?
that is our hypothesis. Again, the early study showed it, and now we're going to expand the study using many more teeth. And who knows, if we're fortunate enough, we can look at other causes of death as well. But that
Wow.
is it. And we want this information not just to be published in journals, but to become part of the dialogue, which is becoming increasingly important now, about not ever again allowing above ground tests, or really any tests, to
Well,
occur.
that's quite amazing. That is really amazing. I hope if people have questions now about this part, we're going to jump to a second part about the nuclear plants. But this is an earth-shattering study that you did that clearly had an enormous impact. That's one thing about being an activist, folks, and I don't have to. You know, you never know what's going to work. I mean, who would have thought that a study of baby teeth would lead through the president of MIT to the president of the United States, that would lead to a bomb test ban on atmospheric testing that would literally save millions of lives, including, you know, a certain percentage of people on this call. I mean, you could conceivably be alive in part because of the testing of baby teeth. It's mind-boggling.
Yes.
So
If you
there
want to
you
read
go.
more about this, by the way, please go to our website, radiation.org, and on the homepage, you'll see research on 100,000 teeth begins. And we have a ton of stuff. It's really gotten a lot of attention from not just in St. Louis, but elsewhere. And it inspired a documentary that was released 2 years ago.
What's the name of the documentary?
Documentary is called Silent Fallout, Baby Teeth Speak. It was done by a Japanese documentarian that found out about our work, and he contacted me, and
Can you put
hallelujah,
that
there was.
can you put that name in the chat? I've never
Sure.
seen it. I would love to see it. Silent, what's it again?
Silent Fallout, Baby Teeth Speak.
Wow, that's really amazing. Okay, Carl Grossman, did you want to pop up?
Yeah, I want to jump in on a number of points here. One, Project 2025, which is essentially the playbook for the Trump administration, has, in fact, I'm reading here, this is a piece done last September in the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist by Tom Armbruster. He's a former U.S. ambassador to the Marshall Islands and earlier the U.S. Embassy in Moscow's Nuclear Affairs officer. In any case, he wrote a piece titled Project 2025's Stance on Nuclear Testing, and he points readers in the bulletin right to page 431, and there's 930 pages in Project 2025, which he notes calls for the United States to, quote, reject ratification of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty and indicate a willingness to conduct nuclear tests and so forth. I've written a bunch of stories in the last several months on this issue, quoting actually Joe Mangano and Bob Alvarez at length. And what kicked me in was it was online, an essay by Robert Peters, and he's a research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and the piece was entitled America Must Prepare to Test Nuclear Weapons. And Joe's just been discussing that. And let me just note quickly that it isn't just baby teeth collected and then investigated out in St. Louis. The impacts of atmospheric bomb testing were all over the country, indeed all over the world, including where I live, Long Island. The Peconic River, which is the main east-west river on Long Island. This is 50 years ago. I was writing pieces about how it was the second hottest river in terms of radioactivity in the state of New York, second only to Cattaraugus Creek, where there was a nuclear fuel recycling project, which didn't get it was a big mess. And Andrew Hull, who was the chief health physicist at Brookhaven National Laboratory. His explanation why the Peconic River was so hot with radioactivity was because of the fallout here on Long Island, 2,000 miles from the Nevada test grounds, from the fallout from the atmospheric nuclear weapons tests.
Mind-boggling. I do have one suggestion. I hear there's some really great tunnels at Mar-a-Lago that they might consider testing, but this is really serious stuff. These guys are dead serious, obviously. And the idea of blowing off more nuclear weapons, either underground or above ground, is pure psychosis. I mean, I don't know what, it's impossible to me to characterize this mindset. I don't know how it would work if people can raise their hand without the video, Mike and Steve, if you want to chime in on this. Bob Alvarez, if you want to speak, please. Well, Lisa White is asking, what can we do? So Joe and Carl, as longtime activists, and Bob, what can we do? And Bob, if you want to chime in- if Bob Alvarez, if you want to chime in through the chat. we
Sluggo,
can give
Bob,
you that way.
Bob was saying that he couldn't speak, unfortunately.
Okay, well, he's welcome to chime in through the chat if he wants. But thank you, Bob. It's just great to have you with us. Carl or Joe, what's our plan of action here?
Well, I think people have to be educated, have to be made aware of the consequences of blowing up nuclear weapons in the atmosphere. This baby tooth study was, I mean, this was the canary in the radioactive coal mine, which because of the relationship between strontium-90 and calcium, which is picked up in teeth and so forth. But most people are totally unaware. Now, I'm a professor of journalism, and I'm also on the board of the Radiation and Public Health Project. And it just irked me, it bothered me so much that before this wonderful piece was published that was the Kansas City Star, Joe tried to get a piece published with Bob in the New York Times and the LA Times, and here major media in this country wouldn't help educate people to the horrors of atmospheric nuclear weapons testing and how there's a push on, and the push is focused on the Heritage Foundation and its Project 2025 report. The push is on, and it's a serious push right now.
Well, knowing these guys, somebody's going to make good money or bad money on blowing off these tests. I mean, maybe Tesla will be doing a special program on testing nuclear weapons. It's beyond. One thing also to remember: the underground tests definitely cause earthquakes, and and we have so many atomic reactors vulnerable to earthquakes that you could really do a double whammy, even though the test is underground. Absolutely insane. Paul Newman, Lynn, and then Melissa. Go ahead, Paul Newman, please. I miss seeing your picture of Franklin Roosevelt over your shoulder, but here we are.
Well, one only has to, if I could have my camera on, you would see Franklin. Anyway, the reason why I have a very big question, obviously Project 2025 is influenced by the Christian nationalists who believe believe they want an Armageddon, basically. And it's like these are the people that are riding the reins of the horses of apocalypse, and this is what's scaring me. These people really believe they want an Armageddon, so Jesus would come down for the second coming. And this is what's scary. And these are the people that support Trump, and also are the people who are the authors of Project 2025.
Yep. I mean, I refer to the Project 2025 as Trump's Mein Kampf. But well, that's a point, Paul, and they can definitely end the Earth with these tests. I mean, there were around 2,000 atmospheric tests that we know of. and some of them were really, really big. I don't know what the biggest bomb they blew off was,
It,
but
the Soviets have the record. The yield was over 50 million tons of TNT. Remember, the Hiroshima bomb was 15,000 tons of TNT. So that bomb, that one bomb the Soviets exploded was like the equivalent of 3,000 Hiroshima bombs. Okay.
right.
Isn't
It's
that
amazing.
These are
kilotons?
hydrogen bombs, which are another
Yeah,
far worse than the atomic bombs.
unbelievable. Lynn Mystic Healer, thank you for that, Paul. Lynn
Sure
Mystic
thing.
Healer. Lynn, are you on muted here? Go ahead, Lynn.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
We can, yes, please.
Okay, yes, I'm wondering, how do we come together? We have 600 political science colleges and get an audit on the Pentagon immediately, because most people have no idea the jobs really needed are to unite all militaries worldwide, because behavioral science has proof the answers are inside. If you're angry, upset, anybody, red, yellow, black, and white, any age, the answers are within us. We were cut off
Okay.
from anyway. So how do we get that? Because they don't know that the chemical, biological, nuclear waste, nuclear power, and nuclear bombs and robotics, how dangerous they all are, the amount of money being spent and the amount it's going to take of work to delete and clean up the entire planet. It's just a house in the multiverse that has to be cleaned up. So
Yes, you're right. 100%. You're right about that. Thank you for that, Lynn. And we know well, the second hour, when we're talking about Joel Siegel, we're also going to talk about activism on a new level, which we really have to pioneer here. Melissa, and then Mimi, and then Lisa. Melissa, are you unmuted?
Yes. Um, Good afternoon, guys. Thank you for having me. You brought up the whole thing about this being Trump's Mein Kampf. Well, there was also a religious aspect. And then, like, what can be done to stop? Because Elon Musk, I don't think, is even a citizen, and he shouldn't even be, in the government and all that. Is this even legal?
I think that's a question that's the number one question that I've seen in the mainstream media, which would make a great bumper sticker to put on a Tesla. Is this even legal? Well, we're going to find out. And you know that I think we come down to the two most important, most powerful people now in the world are John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, the two swing voters potentially on the U.S. Supreme Court, because that's where it's all going. And there was just a 5-4 where Roberts and Coney Barrett voted in a good way. But we're going to see. But I love that phrase. Is this even legal? That really captures a lot. Mimi German, please, and then Lisa White. We got 122 people with us. Go ahead, Mimi.
Yeah, I think what Carl was saying reminded me of how radiation travels. I mean, he's saying that his river, that this river in Long Island is one of the hottest rivers in New York, and it's from the bomb tests. Well, then we had Fukushima, right? And when Fukushima went, so many of us started doing our own citizen scientist measuring rads all the time. And what we found after Fukushima blew was that the Northwest, where I live, was incredibly hit really hard with radiation from Japan. And that doesn't just go away, and when we have forest fires and all of that dust and particles that were coming down heavily on us, but also around the world, and again with Chernobyl too, all of that stuff, the particles and radioactivity lands on the earth. And when fires kick up, those fires can, depending on where they are, also spread more radioactivity. And we found that after Fukushima happened as well. So we have
Right.
to look at nuclear power plants like you do, and like a lot of us do here, but not necessarily everybody. That nuclear power is a nuclear bomb waiting to go.
Yes. And you and I talked a lot about the one reactor left at Hanford. And
With a
by
big-
the way, after Chernobyl, 10 days after Chernobyl on April 26, 1986, a major jump in radiation was noted at the Point Reyes Bird Sanctuary north of San Francisco. And there was a 60% drop in bird births at that sanctuary in the spring of April 20 of 1986. And the guy who reported that was a park ranger who had done for decades an annual survey of bird births at Point Reyes. And in 1986, he reported a 60% drop, and they fired him. You know, I mean, come on, you know. Also, of course, radiation was found in tuna caught off California after Chernobyl, after Fukushima. So there you
And
go.
in our seaweed in California.
Right. And, you know, this is all very mind-boggling. I will take this moment very quickly to interject. I don't think we're going to get to a discussion of Ukraine, but I want everybody to know, and I wrote a piece about this, that nobody in this discussion of Ukraine is talking about the fact that in 1994, Ukraine had inherited or been left with about 1,700 Soviet warheads. The Soviet Union fell in 1991, and they had stashed a tremendous amount of, 1,700 of their warheads in Ukraine. And in 1994, Ukraine gave those warheads to Russia. And an agreement was signed called the Budapest Memorandum. And in the Budapest Memorandum of 1994, Russia and the United States, in concert with Great Britain, France, and China, agreed to guarantee the security of Ukraine in exchange for having given these nuclear warheads to Russia. And in this whole miasma of this invasion of Ukraine, no one that I have seen in the public dialogue is talking about the Budapest Memorandum, where the US and Russia guaranteed the security of Ukraine. Whatever happened to the Budapest Memorandum? So I wrote a piece about it, and it needs to be entered into the dialogue as we go ahead. Sorry about that. I could not refrain from saying that. Lisa White, and then Lynn Feinerman, please. Lisa?
Hello. I'm so thankful to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I have done some research because when I look at the possibility of nuclear fallout, my first inclination is I need to take action. And there are organizations, there's one that's called ICAN, which is a organization formed on banning nuclear weapons. In 2017, they got a Nobel Peace Prize. I have that in the link in the chat box in the group. I'm also through I'm going to be including a petition from the National Catholic Reporter to halt nuclear weapons production. And that's going to be in the link as well. I am a part of an organization called Peace Fresno in my local community, and it started in after 9/11, dedicated to stopping war and preventing anything that could lead to war, peace treaties, and other things that are related. And so when I hear about the possibility of nuclear testing or anything related, my alarm buttons go off. Oh my goodness, what can we do to stop this now? What can we do to invoke change and prevent further violence? a possibility of a nuclear fallout, which I don't need. I don't need to. I guess the scientific data is very important to ensure there's no loopholes when passing a bill to make sure that there's no nuclear
Okay.
production.
Right. And
I understand that for the scientific aspect
right.
of that.
And you got to remember that, Obama came in and pledging to rid the world of nuclear weapons, and then he spent $1 trillion, or I don't know if he spent it all, but he earmarked $1.5 trillion to upgrade the nuclear arsenal. Insane. Karl Grossman is texting his got a Nation of Change piece on this. Anything Karl writes is great. The link is there. Some also is saying that the word of the Budapest Memorandum is circulating on the media. I'm really glad to hear that. But it needs, how do you get in the Oval Office with the presidents of these two countries, and nobody mentions that, hey, we had an agreement in 1994 in exchange for your nuclear weapons. A lot of people in Ukraine are wondering why they gave up their nuclear weapons, to Russia of all people. The reality is at the time they couldn't operate them. They didn't have technical capability, but they certainly would have learned it in 30 years. Thank God they didn't, but here we are. Lynn Feinerman is a great radio host. Then Mila, Carl, and Joe, if you want to chime in. And the chat is really whooping here, so people should take a look. The chat's got really good stuff in it. Go ahead, Lynn, and then Mila.
Yes, just previous to present, we produced at Women Rising Radio a program titled How Project 2025 Will Ruin Your Life with Andra Watkins, whom I actually met through this wonderful Zoom meeting. Andra grew up in the moral majority movement and left it, had the strength to leave it. And one of her big points that she makes in the program that we did is that a lot of people, sometimes 5,000 people per mega church meeting on Sunday, have been listening to their preachers saying very clearly, someday we may have to go to war to uphold Jesus. And it makes you laugh, but these people are being prepped. These people are being prepped to care not so much about this planet or about the people on it, but about reuniting with Jesus. I mean, what I am talking about is an incredible campaign that has been going on for quite a long time in the evangelical movement and has vast numbers of followers from whom it gets money, but it also indoctrinates them to be ready for this sort of eventuality for nuclear holocaust or whatever. And they are taught not to care because they will be reunited with Jesus. I mean,
really,
The rapture.
What would Jesus say about nuclear testing? You got me on that. Thank you, Lynn. It's really frightening, and we should bring her back to talk about this. It's incomprehensible. Mila Reese, and then Pat Morita, since you're in Southern Ohio, where a lot of this nuclear stuff is going on, if you could chime in with what the latest from Piketon and Vinacali, that would be good to hear. Because this stuff, nuclear weapons don't, contrary to the evangelicals, nuclear weapons don't just materialize. They have to be made in places like Piketon, Portsmouth. Go ahead, Mila, then Pat, please, and then Carl and Joseph. We want to switch over to monitoring health at nuclear power plants. We do got to jump off in 9 minutes to go to the next, to Joel Siegel, et cetera. Mila, go ahead.
Yeah, just circling back for a moment to commercial nuclear reactors. Doug Ford, the very colorful premier of Ontario, Canada, had a press conference today where he announced that in effect, or he put into effect a 25% surcharge on electricity that's exported to Michigan, Minnesota, and New York. And when questioned about possible war and Ontario at a certain point maybe needing to buy power back from the US, talked about his plan that he announced in January to increase nuclear power production in Ontario. They're actually going to build a small nuclear reactor, and they're building something called the Bruce nuclear reactor. And anyway, they're ramping up commercial nuclear in Ontario, in part as a reaction to Trump's trade wars. But I think that they've been wanting to do it, and that's just an excuse.
Yeah, thank you for that, Maya. And then there's a question whether they'll pull it off. The new guy that has been designated to take over as Prime Minister of Canada actually has a background in renewables. He's a banker. He's got, he's basically been in the financial community for decades, but apparently he has been positively involved with renewables. So we'll see. Bruce, by the way, is an existing nuclear facility, and there are 3 big ones in Ontario with multiple reactors. So let's see what they're talking about. But thanks for that. Vina Colley and Pat Marina, very quickly, can you give us an update, and then we're going to talk about the nuclear power plants with Joe and Carl, and then we'll be into the 3 o'clock hour. Go ahead, Pat and Vina.
Well, which one do you want to go first?
Well, you spoke up, so go ahead.
Okay. Well, I don't know that Joe Mangano has spoken yet because I couldn't get on until just a few minutes ago.
Yes, he has.
Oh, okay. Well, so then he's told you about the increase in health problems there, and we have a reporter, Jason Sally, who is not able to be on tonight because he's had a cardiac problem, but he's been very prolific in writing about Portsmouth. But
talking about Jason Sally.
Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Pat, please.
Jason Sally, and so Dwayne Pullman, who is a reporter from WKRC, is organizing on April 12th. If people want to put this on their calendars, and I don't know if Joe has talked about this, but April 12th, if you're interested in Portsmouth, you can. Well, anyway, they are having. It's kind of hard. So many of us are from. People are not from there, but they're hosting a town hall where people who are ill will be able to speak about their illnesses. And Dwayne from WKRC, he's got access to Sinclair and Fox News, and he has a lot of interesting segments. And he will be filming all this, so that will
make sure that we're plugged in. We're going to talk in the second hour about plugging in all this stuff so we can build a more powerful network. And as Joe well knows, and Carl, the health news from the Piketon, Fernald, Portsmouth nuclear facilities, which are integral to building these bombs, has been bad for decades. Horrifying. Vina Colley is one of the leaders of the community there. Vina, do you want to chime in for a quick bit, and then we're going to talk about the nuclear monitoring health of the nuclear reactors?
Yeah, we're one of the longest standing groups for over 40 some years. We've broken almost every major story at the plant. I wanted to key in on the baby tooth story, and Alex Baldwin called me about 3 or 4 times, and we couldn't get, I guess the union or someone kept saying that we didn't have strontium, and then I finally found the records that Piketon did have the strontium, but I don't know what happened to the communication about the strontiums, but we do have strontium, but we weren't able to do the baby tooth story because someone told them we didn't have it. We keep working very hard. We just now did a release on a landfill that's been on the outskirts of the plant. Our union back in '79, which Bob Alvarez knows about this because he opened up the door to our union.
we were the largest union in the world who went to Washington, D.C. over health and safety at the Piketon plant. And for some reason, all these years, we keep getting shoved under the rug. And we're very thankful that Joe Mangano and Dr. Catters, we've worked with them in the last 3 or 4 years in their studies. And so it's starting to show a little light. We laid the footprints for this community thing. And like I said, for 40 some years, we have collected victims of cancer and illnesses, not only the workers, but also the community. And I could not even show you the stack that I have of the victims from that plant. So,
Wow.
so right now we're doing a footprint of all of our work is being showed in the community again.
Well, good for you, Vina, and good for you, Pat. You know, I was in Columbus for many years, and the bombs come from somewhere. And Portsmouth, Piketon, Fernald, that area of Southern Ohio is just Hell's Kitchen, man. I mean, and thank God you're there and doing this work. We appreciate it so much. Joe and Carl, you want to jump in on this? We're gonna have to postpone till next week a deeper dive on what we want Bobby Kennedy can do around the nuclear plants. If you guys can come back next week, I want to take a deep dive into that. And I do have to say, my one regret in this conversation is I've lost about half my teeth. I wish I'd turned them over to you, Joe. Maybe I can get them back from the dentist at some point. Anyway, go ahead, Joe Mangano and Karl Grossman.
Yeah, if I could, one final statement would be, this discussion is a pretty dark one. All right, things look quite bad. We're going in the wrong direction. But I'm absolutely convinced that we can stop this. And the reason for that is the same thing happened in the early 1960s with the Test Ban Treaty. If anyone thinks the Test Ban Treaty was, accepted by all and it sailed right, nothing could be further from the truth. Right after the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was a very close call to having an all-out nuclear war, Kennedy and Khrushchev took steps to pass the treaty. But at the time, Kennedy wanted it, but none of the top military people wanted the treaty, and most politicians, the Senate had to pass the Test Ban Treaty. And the only reason that changed was Kennedy called several meetings together. He had a gentleman named Norman Cousins go out and empower groups like unions and scientists and so on against the treaty. And he called a meeting of women's magazines, Women's Day and those things. And each of them wrote articles about it. Also, many people wrote to the White House and to the U.S. Senate. And just in that a couple of months before the Senate voted, at first the mail from the public was 15-1 against the test ban. But after those couple of months, it had almost broken even. All right. Barry Commoner makes the comment that the Senate was a hornet's nest of cold warriors. Bob Alvarez and I wrote an article on this in the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists a few years ago. It completely turned around. And the reason being regular people were empowered because they knew something. They could say strontium-90, they could say nuclear war. And that's what changed it. And we could do the same here.
Well, one thing, Joe, and that's incredibly impressive, and we need to do it again. We don't have John Kennedy in the White House, to put it mildly, but we do have, I think, a more aware and seasoned activist population than we did in '63, and that's got to be key. I think people really need to look. It's easy to find, obviously, Jack Kennedy's speech announcing the test ban, because it went on for at least it seemed like a half hour, and you could tell that he really knew he was on thin ice. He was saying things over and over again why we needed the test ban, he really labored at that speech. It wasn't like a one-off, you know, and it gives you an idea of how deep, as you say, the opposition people didn't trust the treaty, and he really had to sell it. But I think one of the things we might raise is how much these tests would cost, because it's not inconsiderable. And we're going to have to mobilize our population, and we'll talk about this again next week if you guys can come back. Carl, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah. Online is the presentation that President Kennedy gave with the signing of the Test Ban Treaty of 1963. And just let me read a couple of lines. Continued unrestricted testing will increasingly contaminate the air that all of us must breathe. And then he goes on speaking about children and grandchildren ending up with cancer in their bones, with leukemia in their blood, poison in their lungs. And the pieces that I've written in recent weeks about the push to resume atmospheric tests, just a quick last two sentences. Are we, if there is a return to atmospheric nuclear weapons testing, to go back to the years of radioactive fallout and the resulting health impacts? And as Kennedy stated, children and grandchildren with cancer in their bones, with leukemia in their blood, or with poison in their lungs.
Wow. And clearly the baby tooth study, as linked to the mortality numbers, shows the reality of the situation. Isn't that right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're going to continue this.
It's a topic that was never addressed by the U.S. government. The only study on fallout and cancer was put out by our friend Bob Alvarez when he worked for the Energy Department in the late 1990s on thyroid cancer, but not cancer deaths. To this day,
Right.
we don't know. We don't know.
Well, thanks to Bob's work over the decades, he's the godfather of all this, and Joe, your work, and all the other people and Pat and Bina at places like Portsmouth, and we need to put this all together, and so we will do it next week again, first hour, and Bobby Kennedy Jr. is now the head of Health and Services. His uncle tried to do stuff we'll discuss next week. We have talked to him. He wrote the introduction to SolartopiA. There's no excuse here. And so we need to put this together, and we need to really have an in-depth piece of it. So let's do this again next week, first hour. Thank you so much, Joe and Carl and Bob, Pat, Vina. This has been, Mimi, Lynn, this has been a really amazing discussion, and we will revisit it next week. I will say, tell everybody, we are not live streaming on YouTube because of the Zoom bombing that's been going on. But we are recording, and then Steve and Mike have been putting it up on YouTube later so that it can't be Zoom bombed. And that's why we also don't have everybody's picture on there. I really miss seeing all you guys. It's really not as much fun, but there we go. Okay, thank you everybody for that. It was an amazing hour. And now we're going to go into another amazing hour. In this second hour, we're joined by Russell Green. We're expecting Mimi Kennedy to come on. Dave Saltman has just joined us. And we want to talk about, join a discussion of our good friend Joel Siegel, who's a founder of this call. He's the only guy that I would raise money for, but we want to combine it with a discussion. We have Lee Felsenstein on with us and Tatanka Bricka to talk about upping the level of our organizing. We're already seeing a lot of mass demonstrations, thank goodness, against the fascist coup that's going on. But we have not achieved a level of follow-up that we need. And we've engaged in a discussion, and Lee Felsenstein is the founder of the legendary Homebrew group that gave birth basically to Silicon Valley, we've been talking about various ways that the demonstrations that are occurring and are only going to get bigger. I mean, we are very likely to see millions of people in the streets and at big rallies these coming months. And in Lee Felsenstein's autobiography, he of the deep, I almost said the deep state of the digital world. There's a line in there about how our big rallies over the decades, and I'm reminded, of course, of the 1 million people march that came in when Trump took power in 2017. These have become basically photo ops, where everybody shows up, giant crowds show up, and they have a rally, and there are wonderful speeches, and everybody loves each other. And there's a giant photograph taken with everybody there, and people try and guess how many people are there, and then everybody goes home. And it was mentioned, the great Tim Carpenter, founder of PDA, Progressive Democrats of America, would never allow a rally to complete without everybody's name on a sign-up sheet.
That's right.
And that now, in Joel Siegel's honor here, we have the question, okay, everybody is showing up to these rallies now with cell phones, but they also have pens. How do we use these rallies to build our lists and guarantee further activism where in the past that hasn't happened? Imagine if we got every name and a cell phone number and email of the 1 million people that showed up at the march after Trump was first inaugurated in 2017. Imagine if those people had been linked together, which they were not. So in addition, Russell's going to talk to us about Joel and where he's at and as a founder of this call. And I think we've been joined by Mimi Kennedy. Mimi, if we could put Mimi's picture up, that'd be great. Mimi is also we're going to be organizing to help Joel Siegel. And at the same time, we're going to organize to take our organizing to another level. So Russell, do you want to jump in on this, please?
Beautiful setup, Sluggo. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
You're good. You're
Hey,
good.
everybody. Nice to be with you. I'm sorry I missed the first half, but I'll watch the YouTube because it sounds like it was a very important call. Grateful for the time. And it's interesting, that I was the person that said that thing to you about, hey, Mimi, said the thing to you about Tim. And I'll just tell quickly, it's sort of the activism story, my version of it. With PDA in 2007, it was from Lila Garrett on KPFK that I heard about when Marcy Winograd running for Congress. And I went to Marcy Winograd's event, and PDA was everywhere. And before I knew it, PDA was my life, central. Tim Carpenter called me personally the next day. Not only did he get my name and number, he called me personally. Connor Boylan, who was the co-deputy director at the time. It was a big central idea that Tim taught all of us, is that you don't leave any event without having recruited people to the cause and making them feel how important their participation was, not just their name, that we needed them and there was a place for them. So I'm glad that you're bringing our focus to that, and it's a perfect framing for Joel, which is, of course, why you thought of it. Joel Siegel is a dear friend of mine. I met him in 2014, not knowing that he was a co-founder of the Progressive Democrats of America. Mimi can tell us more about that. But at the time, he was sort of re-entering our PDA world, and he and I became close friends. We hit it off immediately. I mean, if you never met Joel, he's a really one-of-a-kind, sort of a cocky, for sure of himself guy who's done a remarkable amount of things in so many social justice sectors and networks. You'll hear more about that. And he and I began to really focus on climate work together. And he introduced me to remarkable groups of people and networks, every one of whom, if you speak to, and I've been speaking to some of them recently as we started this campaign that I'll tell you about, and every person I speak to says, Joel, my brother Joel and I did this together. And they go through a version of something pretty remarkable. So Joel's been struggling for a while, and we have a lot of hope that we can help him restore his health. And without going into too much detail, because a lot of it is personal, I can tell you that it's really centered around depression. And any of you who have struggled with depression understand that that's not just something that you get out of bed the next day and it's okay. It's a severe challenge for him to just be gentle. But his attitude and his energy and his mind are alive and well. And our goal is to support him over the next 6 months in a plan towards to restore his health. And we're looking for your support in doing that. And so we've started a GoFundMe that I'll put into the link. And whatever way you can help, whether it's that you can make a donation yourself, even the smallest. A lot of small donations in our world of progressive activism, small donations by the hundreds really matter. And if you can make a larger donation, and if that would be great. And if you can't, if you could just share it, post it on your network or with people in particular who you know Joel, that would be a great help. And I'm going to put it in the chat and sort of hand it over to Mimi to sort of pick up from there. Thank you for the time, Sluggo.
Thank you, and I think we should dedicate this networking that we need to take to the new level. Somebody put in the chat the great quote from Gil Scott-Heron: "The revolution will not be televised, but I think it's going to happen, at least in part, on the internet." And that's exactly something that Joel had been teaching us. How do we network now? Taking networking to a new level and taking and making Joel sort of a poster boy for it, poster person, is a great idea. Mimi, I saw yesterday, she organized one of the greatest birthday parties I've ever been to. There's a 90th birthday of one of our great activists. Mimi spoke and Jane Fonda spoke. It was really fabulous in suburban Santa Monica there. Mimi's in her car, and as long as she's not driving, we do allow her to show her face. So Mimi, give us the scoop on Joel and on further organizing.
Okay. This is great because Joel was key to making PDA the effective instrument that it was. It skyrocketed to that. Why? Because Joel was, I don't know if this has been said, a staffer in the office of John Conyers in DC. And John Conyers loved Joel. And he always had John Conyers' ear. And Congressman John Conyers was, I think, the very first congressional member of the PDA Advisory Board, of which I was chair. And I had met few Congress people, and not been to DC that much, when I became advisory board chair, because PDA needed someone whose name was known, and I'd been on TV, so that when we asked people for money, they kind of knew where they could go and get it back from if they had to. So Tim had asked me to be chair, but there were going to be these Congress members on our board, and John Conyers was the first to say yes, and that's because of Joel Siegel. So it was shortly after PDA formed in 2004 and after the 2004 election, which of course the outcome was disappointing. Now we had George Bush II again, and we met in Washington in January, the Summit in the Snow, we called it. And I remember Joel came to us, and I think we were in a Taco Bell somewhere eating, because that's all we could ever afford. And Joel, no, actually it was a decent restaurant, because Joel came in and we were all 12 or 13 of us at a table, and he listened to us for a while and he went, "Wow, this is the first group of activists I have ever been with that really likes each other." And Tim said, "Yeah, well, we're family. This is what PDA does. This is how we do it, Joel. Come on, you're in the family." And he sat right down. And that was it. Now, Joel was Southern. He had a syrupy Southern accent and way about him. And I remember thinking for half a second, oh, shit, the Bill Clinton thing. I was, not ready to be all Clintonized into the Democrats at that point. We were PDA. It was a whole different thing. Well, Joel was instrumental in being a whole different thing, because with John Conyers came Barbara Lee, with Barbara Lee came Maxine Waters, and so on and forth. Jim McGovern. The Progressive Caucus grew from like 14 people to 120.
Right.
Joel had to do with that. And I remember when I was in the Loop, Armando Iannucci, who also did the show Veep, he was very interested, Scottish, Jewish, Neapolitan guy with roots in Scotland and Naples and Eastern Europe. He said he was astonished the first time he went to talk about getting places for In the Loop in Washington, and he was on the Hill. And I guess there was someone from the West Wing that was around at the same time. And he said all the staffers were going, oh my God, that's so-and-so from West Wing. And Armando had the same reaction that I always did, which is, wait a minute, you think they're celebrities? They're only playing you guys on TV. You're the celebrities. You're actually on Capitol Hill being staffed to the legislatures of the United States of America. And I kept telling Joel that, celebrities are, yeah, you know them because they've been on TV, and now we've seen the damage that does. And by the way, Netflix, I think, is rerunning The Apprentice, 14 years of BS, trying to make Trump seem really important and competent. They're rerunning it on TV to try to pump up that image a little bit again. But Joel understood what he could do, and he was always organizing groups for legislation, and he did more for Medicare for all than anybody else. And that's the irony, that now, because he didn't care about making money in his lifetime, because he wasn't a Bill Clinton, he was a guy with John Conyers and standing with the poor, one might say, or certainly groups that didn't have a ton of money. And now he has to worry about where they're going to put him, where he's going to be, what his quality of care is going to be, because he ain't a rich man. And what he has had in his life, he has shared. So that's why, for me, PDA, it's like, thank you, Joel. We wouldn't have gotten onto Capitol Hill really without you. You were beginning, and you looked at us and went, wow, I never saw a group of activists that really liked each other, because he was used to coalition groups carping from their silos and saying, I got to get more for us. Yeah. So that's what I have to say about Joel Siegel.
Well, let's put it in the broader context. If you can put Russell in the chat where people can connect to the support committee for Joel, that would be great. And let's and Joel, I don't know, is Joel on the call? Okay, so but the point about, we want to make Joel is responsible for these calls in a lot of way. When we were starting 5 years ago, he was integral to our organizing. And after 2004, when Bob Fitrakis and I staggered out of Columbus, Ohio, having seen the stolen election, Joel set up a hearing, a private hearing, smaller hearing in Capitol Hill to discuss how they had stolen the 2004 election. And at that hearing, I got to sit next to Bernie Sanders. I will report that he was very grumpy, but it was great being with Bernie.
Joel and Tim had that same quality where they would make something happen, and I think that's what you were speaking to when you set this segment up.
Right. So in the tradition of Joel and of Tim Carpenter, who I never met, we want to take our organizing to a new level. But Joel was the godfather of the Affordable Care Act. And without
676, he drafted the first version, and we re-entered it each Congress subsequently.
Without Joel Siegel, there would have been no Affordable Care Act, and now, of course, it's under attack.
And the Full Employment Act as well.
Yes, that's right. So what we want to do now is find a new. Joel was great at finding new levels of organizing, and still is. And he's always been preaching about how people need to get out of their silos. So what we need to do now is, we know these rallies are coming. We know that people are going to be in the streets. We cannot let these things be photo ops. We have got to go, as Tim Carpenter would, and Joel Siegel taught us. We have got to get them to the second level, to another level of organizing. Joel always followed up, and Tim, always followed up, and we now and these calls have to set the spark so that these rallies, people don't just show up and go home. That if either on their cell phones or with sign-up sheets, something has got to be done to link the people going into the streets now into further action. And I don't have the magic bullet. Oh, no, I hate that term. Sorry, that magic wand. And so maybe Mike Hirsch, maybe you do, and then Ruth Strauss, and then we'll continue to talk. I'd love if you join in because you're a lifetime organizer. How do we take things along with Joel's lead to the next level? Mike?
Yeah, real quick, I'd like to highlight a few more things that Joel accomplished. And whenever I tell people half of Joel's resume, they roll their eyes and say, there's no way 10 people could have accomplished that. But Joel found out how hospital interns, doctors were forced to work day after day without a break, and how as they became more and more tired and exhausted, they'd misprescribe people and do all kinds of things leading to deaths. And Joel took it upon himself to change that, to severely limit and curtail this grueling torture, this kind of hazing that they put all these interns through. And hospital deaths dropped precipitously. It's unknown how many lives were saved and how many people's health was preserved by that. Besides, as Russell mentioned, Joel convened a bunch of experts to draft the first Medicare for All legislation. And as Russell said, we kept introducing it every Congress and building up co-sponsors. That was Joel. He also spearheaded efforts to keep the General Hospital open in Detroit. And he had to work with the W. Bush administration to do that. And he was able to bite his tongue when he heard them saying their stupid things that they would say, but he negotiated to keep that hospital open. He also negotiated with the musician Bono and some other members of the W. Bush administration to find millions and millions of dollars to combat the spread of AIDS in Africa. And when he started, what he found was the crass indifference of people who said, well, that's Africa. What do we care? Let them take care of it themselves. Joel knew that every neglected person dying of AIDS in Africa, not only was that inhumane and unjust, but it led to the potential of that spreading further and harming more people. And the infrastructure that was built because of the effort that Joel led helped curtail the spread of Ebola, because otherwise there were entire villages where there were no doctors, no facilities, no clinics. But thanks to Joel's leadership and his tireless leadership, bringing people together who ordinarily wouldn't even look at each other, he was able to stave off potentially a global pandemic of Ebola. And on it goes with Joel, because he never gave up. He never lost faith in what he was doing. He never lost faith in humanity. He managed to inspire people, bring people together. And, Russell mentioned that Joel initiated an Israeli-Palestinian peace effort. And one of my big regrets is that we weren't able to achieve what we could have at that point. Joel was so open-hearted. He brought in people who, some of them weren't committed to the mission. Other of them were highly unrealistic. But that was Joel. He was unrealistic until, through his hard work and leadership and inspiration, he made these goals realistic. And he needs us now. Please pitch in what you can to help Joel out. He's not done yet. He still has more to offer. But if Joel's touched your life directly, you know it. And if he hasn't touched your life directly, he has indirectly. Whenever you and a loved one goes to the hospital and doesn't get treated by a doctor who's staggering around like a zombie.
Right.
That's all Joel. And Joel was all about organizing, knocking down silos, like Mimi mentioned. Too many people operate within silos and worry too much about their own turf. Joel never had that. Joel brought people together, and in his honor and learning from his lessons, Greep continues to do that. We connect people together. PDA continues to work within coalitions, because if we don't work together, it ain't going to work.
Right, and Joel's still with us, so we're not talking about it in the past tense. So, Russell, please, if you can post in the chat how people can support, and we're going to bring Joel into the out of his depression, and my father suffered from depression, and still, have an incredible life, and Joel's not done yet. So he needs to know we're supporting him, and let's put that in the chat how to get in touch with him. And again, we want a link now. We know what's coming, and we know that people are going to be in the streets. We need to translate that into real organizing power, which is exactly what Joel and Tim Carpenter would have wanted us to do. So we need to do that. Mimi is a great organizer. So is Russell. So is Mike. A lot of great organizers on these calls. We need to solve the puzzle of how to convert the power of these rallies into more organized operations. So let's talk to Ruth, David Saltman, and Lee Felsenstein. If you want to jump in, that'd be great. Tatanka, if you want to jump in. Go ahead, Ruth Strauss, please.
Yeah, hi. This is said generically and for Joel. I am a proponent of medication for depression. There's, partly exogenous, but also can be endogenous. And there may be, there are people probably who disagree. I'm not interested in that. It can be literally life-saving. And I do not mean prescribed by a primary care doctor, prescribed by a psychiatrist who is skilled in choosing the right medication or combination of medications. It can be life-saving and life-changing. And I'm a very firm believer. And if Joel feels stigmatized by that suggestion, I always love telling people when I was training in cardiology at UCLA, there was a secretary in the Department of Medicine, and her sole job was to match interns and residents and medical students and fellows with psychiatrists in the Westwood area, because UCLA was such a boilerplate of stress, and the faculty were so abusive and everything. So anyway, I hope that he will consider that. It really can be life-changing. Thank you.
Yes, and I think on the left, especially among people with empathy and compassion, this is a really depressing time, and we need to deal as a community with depression. When my dad was having his depressions, it was not spoken of. It was really stigmatized. Now it's a $1 billion industry, but my father had a real radar for people who were depressed. And, you never talked about it in the 50s and 60s when I was growing up in Columbus, Ohio. But my dad did. And how he got through his life the way he did, suffering from depression, he only had one medication. It was called Parnate. And they tried to take him off it, and it didn't work. And none of the modern stuff worked for him. He had electroshock therapy, which was not good for him. But he managed to live an incredible life. And he was so compassionate and empathetic. And I'm going to get to Dave Saltman in 1 second. Something popped in there. I was reading something, a horrible interview with the horrible Elon Musk. You have to remember that Elon Musk is just an F away from felon, right? Elon and felon, they go together. And he actually said, this is an astonishing thing for any human being to say. He said that empathy is the downfall of civilization. Let that sink in for a minute. How can any human being say that empathy is the downfall for civilization? That's what Elon Musk said. So I want to come up that we use the word sociopath. There's got to be a word, like Mimi, you're the poet. There's got to be a word for a human being that does not have empathy or compassion. It almost seems genetic. You look at Donald Trump, this is a beast that has no empathy or compassion. That's what sets himself aside from the human community in my world. There has been no more destructive organism on the face of the earth than a human being that lacks compassion and empathy. And somewhere there's a word for that. It's not sociopath, but anyway, anybody who wants to think of it, let's have kind of a contest.
Sluggo, we could
Anyway,
combine, we could combine Trump and Musk and maybe call it a Trusk.
Well, that's a start. Of course, that was also an album almost by Fleetwood Mac, so a little close there. But...
Yeah, but it was one of their less successful albums.
Yes,
so.
it was. Yes. David Saltman, then Tatanka, Dorothy, and Mike again. Oh, Mike, you just spoke. Doctor, we do have a genuine therapist with us, Dr. Nancy. She can give us some advice, Lisa White. But go ahead, David Saltman, please, and then Tatanka.
Yeah, thank you, Harvey. I didn't know Joel Siegel, but I was deeply involved in the anti-war movement, starting with Ramparts and so on, which was a media-based, if you want to call it, organization. Oh, by the way, the word that I think, at least that I've been using for these guys, is monster. These are monsters.
Yes, they are monsters.
These are absolutely monsters. But Harvey, I'm interested in you, as far as I understand it. You're my organizing hero. You organized the Clamshell Alliance.
Ooh.
And you organized you filled Madison Square Garden 5 nights in a row with music and millions of people. I don't know of any more successful organizing effort than that. So I think you need to tell us how that worked. In my impression, and I could have this wrong, this all started with Lovejoy's nuclear war, with when Sam Lovejoy knocked down the nuclear tower in Massachusetts, and you kind of took it from there. So why can't we do that again? I mean, music is still the key, in my opinion.
It is a key. I'm a very small part of those things. If you say that I organize them, you're trying to get me killed by both our friends and the other side. But I thank you, Dave, for the compliment. I was just very, very lucky to be a part of these movements. I will tell you what inspired me. And somebody, yes, Joe Mangano pointed out, and this is absolutely critical. And I think it really makes a big difference in organizing, that we can win. Not only can we win, but we have been winning. If you'd had said in 1961 that you were setting out to stop atmospheric bomb testing, people would say, oh, you'll never get that done. So the formative moment, again, I have been a small part of these organizations. I've been along for the ride. I've been very, very lucky. The formative moment in my life as an activist, I was a junior in high school. My parents were good New Deal liberals, my mother especially. And my mother was a tremendously compassionate, empathetic human being. So I was captain of the tennis team in my high school, and they called me because of my mother. There was a rally, the NAACP was rallying in Columbus to, and I may have told this already, to desegregate a roller rink. Why a roller rink in Columbus, Ohio in 1962 was segregated is beyond me. This is 8 years after the Brown decision, but nonetheless. So me and a guy and his girlfriend, who I think in retrospect was the sister of Les Wexner, who started the Limited. But anyway, we went and picketed. I had no idea what we were doing, but we just picketed. And then we went in. I think it was supposed to show that they were, segregated. They let these white kids in and not the black kids. And you know what? We won. And the damn place was desegregated. And I looked at this as a jock, and I said, wow, that's another sport. We could go out and win these things. And I have always, and all the people around me, including Joel and Russell and Mimi, we have always had the mindset that we can succeed. You know, and Jesse Jackson really said, you know, you got to celebrate your victories and you got to believe in your victories. I mean, when we started fighting nuclear power, Nixon said there would be 1,000 nuclear reactors in the United States by the year 2000. In the year 2000, there were 104. Way too many, but 896 fewer than there might have been. So now we're looking at these guys in the White House, these crazy monsters with their lack of empathy and compassion, and we can beat them. I have no doubt that we can beat them. We have no choice. You know, we're cornered. We're a cornered animal, and if we don't beat them, we're dead. This is about our survival. So, you know, if there's anything I've learned, and again, I've been a minor player in these fabulous movements. I've been incredibly blessed. But and it's not a question of optimism. It's a question of belief that you can win, and that you have no choice but to win. That's the combination there. I look at Mimi, I look at Russell. I see people who've been succeeding their entire lives, and you know, we just know what we're up against. We're up against a tough opponent, but we have children and grandchildren. We have to survive. They have to survive. We have no choice but to win. So, of course, we'll win. That's it. Tatanka, you're of the same mindset. Please.
Well, we have no choice but to win, and so we choose every day to win.
Right.
And I think your comment about Elon Musk and empathy is basically these folks let out what they're really afraid of. They let out our strength. They want to cauterize our hearts and our souls. They know the power of love and empathy. I mean, when we get to the next level of organizing, as you talk about it, that will be one of the characteristics of it. Because I believe that there is no separation in all the universe, is that solidarity is baked into our DNA. That we basically have to rid ourselves of the separation to experience the solidarity and empathy that has us reach in and answer our reason for incarnating, the reason we're here on Earth. You know, we reach into our souls and our hearts. I mean, that's what characterized the civil rights movement. You know, white people, each kids to old people, it's a good day to die. Every day they knew what they were doing. They had no choice, and yet they made the choice. So anyway, all that, one of the things I want to say about, I have a lot of great stories about Joel, but I don't want it left out because I'm a musician, okay? I'm a jazz musician. And it's one of the things that Joel and I share it. He's an amazing guitar player. He plays an amazing bass guitar. And it gave him a great deal of pleasure just to come home before he got deep into where he is now and to go out into clubs, and he could jam with anybody. He really has a great ear and love of music. So I just also wanted to add that to the fact of Joel just showing up and opening doors for people. And you know, one of the things I did learn is if you have a resource like that, you share it with the people in the movement that really need it. And you know, we're all a testament to that.
Really.
And in terms of the nuclear war situation and evangelical, anti-Christian, I mean, it's the Antichrist. They call themselves Christian, but Joseph Bar Joseph or Yeshua or Jesus, whoever you want to call him, you know, they just do the opposite. So, but I think it's true deep in the heart of the Pentagon, and I won't speak for him, but maybe we'll have the person I'm talking about on the show who is now making contacts with people all across the political spectrum, but he's one of us, and he has an amazing lifetime of success in our journey as organizers, and has impacted American and global history. He has communicated to us on our Circle of 100, we've been working with for years now, creating a progressive government and waiting document with principles, policies, and programs. He basically, with his contact with people in the Department of Defense and in the Pentagon, said that they are so far right. They're MAGA, and they have that belief system. They are not afraid of precipitating an all-out nuclear war, because it'll be the way they get up with Jesus, and then the rest will be decided. What they are deeply afraid of is that they know that the ETs have shut down the nuclear weapons, in Montana. They know that they've shut down aircraft carriers. They know what they're afraid of is that when they want to get it up, they won't be able to get it up. And, why don't they land on the White House lawn? It may be revealed, and it's not just the US, it's anybody with nuclear weapons. So anyway, yes, the threat of the white nationalists is also the thing that Greg Palast talks about in Vigilantes, Inc. We have to acknowledge the racism and the fact that Trump stole this election too. It's really important to understand and to become allies with the least among us, the ones that are really, discriminated against. And our opposition knows that. And so I think Elon, when he comes down and uses that quote you said, he knows that's our strength, and he wants to make sure he does his part to have a certain number of people shy away from empathy, shy away from solidarity, shy away from, stay in your silos, stay right where you are, So anyway, yes, I think we can win, because sometimes the signs, the things that outrage us, we should just really understand that from their point of view, that's what they're most afraid of.
Right.
It's our strength, our hearts.
Well, we don't have a choice but to win. I do want to very quickly, we'll go to Dr. Nancy in 1 second. I do want to mention, and Dave, this has been a great motivation for me, is that activism is a great gift, because and it's a great antidepressant. It's the best antidepressant, because you wake up when you're an activist, you wake up every morning knowing that the day will have meaning. You don't have an existential crisis, because you got to stop the nuclear plant. You got to keep the hospital open. You got to win the ACA. These are things that have meaning.
And you don't do it alone.
And you go, right. And the people that you work with in the movement are the best.
And I would love Lee Felsenstein to join this conversation too, because he
should.
He was going to have some time today. So even if he comes back next week.
I'm looking at Mimi Kennedy or Russell Green or Dave Solomon and you guys, everybody on this call. It's just, what a gift to get to know you people. And this is all, heart-to-heart activism. I have never had a bad day where I didn't know what the hell I was going to do, because there's so much to do. There was a great line from A.J. Musty, the great nonviolent organizer. And he says, somebody asked him, what's it been like to be an activist all your life? And he says, well, the pay's no good, but the work is steady. But he was wrong, because the pay is the best. It's the best pay you can have, because we do win. When we win, we know our lives have been worthwhile, and we've always got something meaningful to do. So there you go.
Yeah. And I wanted, before I spoke, to say hi to Russell and hi to Mimi. It's great to see you again.
It's great to see everybody. Still have 93 people with us. Dr. Nancy, go ahead, please. And then Melissa, Dorothy, and Lisa, and Mimi.
First of all, Harvey, thank you for the introduction, but I am not a professional therapist. I am a medical doctor. I'm a neurologist. And by being certified in neurology, you are also a psychiatrist. My boards are in neurology and psychiatry.
Well, thank God you're on the call. We need your services.
I'm technically a psychiatrist, but I practice neurology. A few things. I totally agree with what Dr. Ruth said, that it's important to treat depression and anxiety. To me, biochemically in the brain, those are separate, although they tend to fall together for more complicated reasons. But treatment should not be an embarrassment. And I will tell you that when you do over-the-counter alternative herbal kinds of things, when those herbal things get analyzed chemically, very often they are doing exactly what a prescription medication for the same reason would do. They're the same thing, and you don't know what else comes along with it. So you always risk that there's something dangerous in it. But it's really important to treat depression and anxiety. I think playing music is a treatment. Certainly, it's been proven in good studies that daily exercise is a great treatment. But when you get to the point that medications will make your life better, it's very important, because chronic depression or chronic anxiety actually causes changes in your brain. We all start out with different brains and are more prone or less prone to these things. But it's important to treat. And as far as Musk and Trump go, we know that Elon Musk came out in public early on bragging about how he is autistic. And we know Trump has a son who's autistic, and having seen many countless autistic kids myself, I will tell you that it doesn't come from nowhere. It's very clear that those personalities, I prefer to call it a personality, run in families. And I don't mean it negatively, but what autistic personalities struggle with is empathy. They just don't pick up clues of what other people are feeling. Luckily, most kids with autism, the mentally bright ones, they have great parents, and their parents train them to be sympathetic. They train them to be polite. And I will tell you, they are the best people in the world when they are trained to do that. But I've heard plenty of stories about Trump being younger and listening to Elon's mother being interviewed. They were not trained to be considerate of others. And they were trained to value wealth. And so they are it's like they have blinders on. All they really value is getting richer.
Wow. Well, I feel sorry for them, but they're really imposing a lot of problems for the rest of us. So very well done, stated, Mimi and Nancy. It's always really great to have you. Go ahead, Mimi. Did you want to talk? Yes,
I
please.
would love to answer that. I just put it in the chat. I wanted to say that we should not be wasting our energy on trying to think, although it's amusing and I love everyone on this call. And I've done it myself, but it's wasted energy to think of how to dissociate these guys or these people from humanity. They're doing that themselves. Greg Boyle, SJ, who runs the biggest gang recovery program in the world here in LA, has said he's never met an evil person. He's met a lot of wounded people. And how wounded do you have to be to turn out like that and do those things and say empathy doesn't count? Very wounded. And it's true. We have a family from Altadena burned out now in our home, and their adult son is nonverbal autistic, and they treat him so kindly and gently, and he's not afraid, and he's not awkward about what he can and cannot do, and you can see it. If you have someone who is taught to fear and who already feels a little bit unable to figure stuff out about feelings or other people, you're going to end up with people who are frightened, and they will latch on to anything: domination, power, money, looking good, whatever it is, TV stardom, that can make them feel safe and loved. And that's what we're dealing with. And then they will never let go of that thing. And then they will try to do a final solution of getting rid of all the people who don't believe they're wonderful, like they've pumped themselves up to be. And it is almost a waste of time to try to figure out how to oppose that. but we have to oppose the spell that this has cast on our society. And everybody was talking about community and contact. That's the right thing. That is how we're going to do this. The only way to do this. Who was it was just talking about a jam session? Tim Carpenter would have said, oh, you know what? Let's organize a travel road show and go to a couple of cities where we know we have at least 5 musicians, and let's have a bill of music and charge the money to get in and sign everybody up to be part of PDA, and they'll get to know each other there. Everybody feeds something, get somebody to bring food. Stuff like that is where we got to be for a while. That plus the elections coming up. We have 2 elections coming up that, if they're not rigged, could change the balance of power. Because of that, I am very fearful that they have already been rigged, but I wouldn't let that stop us just to investigate it and watch it. If we could stop some of this legislation in the House or stop some of this cult behavior in the House, that would be great. But I am saying that Tim would have taken this as a travel, as a road show, and sign people up. Also stickers. We could sticker at the marches with PDA and our website. You know, wear a sticker. That's how Tim built PDA. Okay, thank you for that. But Nancy, well said. I really wanted that to be brought out. These people have been really wounded, and their survival strategies are damaging the whole planet. But to try to just oppose who they are one-on-one, that ship has sailed. Now we got to deal with everyone else who believes that they have magic. They don't. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
real quick, I just want to emphasize what Mimi was saying. Great to see you, Mimi. Great to see you, Russell. Tim used to, back in the day, watch The Door for Jackson Browne, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, various other musicians. And the way Tim told the story is they would take their Coke money for a week, put it in a jar, rent out the Hollywood Bowl, and have a benefit concert. And Tim told the story about how one time there was the scruffy looking guy carrying a guitar who said that he was supposed to join in and perform on stage. And Tim got on a walkie-talkie that didn't have cell phones back then and said, hey, Graham, there's a guy here who says he's supposed to be playing. I never heard of him. His name is Bruce Sprongs. And they're like, that's Bruce, let him in. Bruce,
and since his name was Springsteen, they probably thought he was Jewish.
Probably. And he had just been on Time and Newsweek, but Tim didn't know who he was. But Tim loved music, and he loved organizing, and he loved road shows. Mimi's absolutely correct. And if I could just say one thing about what Mimi was talking about, these people who are predatory and destructive, they all need to be out of power and in therapy. And the sooner we can get that to happen, the better off we'll all be.
Well, if there was ever a group of people that needed therapy, it was the tech bros. There were at the inauguration. You know, you got Zuckerberg, Bezos, Elon Musk. You know, they all look like they really need help, man. So, and Trump most among them.
To that point, Harvey, I that call was from Lee. He doesn't know whether to leave or not. Can we just? He's a tech hero. I mean, he's the guy who invented really the personal computer, and he might have something to say about this. Can you invite him on? He's here.
All right,
he can take my place. You know, you can put him in.
Well, I know Dorothy Reich has had her hand, and then let's bring in Lee.
I'm right here too.
Who's that?
I'm Melissa.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, Dorothy was prior to you, but let's go Dorothy.
My time to.
And then Lee, and then we'll get to you. Okay, Melissa.
I'll let Dorothy speak.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Dorothy, and then Lee.
Hi. And
then Melissa.
So totally incredible. So much to say. The movement seems to be, if you listen to Tech Won't Save Us, to bankrupt Elon Musk by continuing to attack him, and his stock is way down. And according to people who know more about this than me, he could be forced at a certain point to do a margin call. Are you there? And if he has to do a margin call, if he gets a margin call and he has to start selling his stock, then it's going to be all over. So that's something to keep in mind.
For those of you who don't know, a margin call is the financial equivalent of a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, because his money is all borrowed against his Tesla stock. That's the majority of his money. I just wanted to say, well, first, I have a funny Bruce Springsteen story if you have a minute. I went
Well,
to.
Lee has to go. Can we let Lee come in and then we'll come back to you?
Sure.
Lee, go ahead. Lee, jump in, and then Felsenstein, and then we'll go back to
Thanks. I've
Dorothy.
been sitting here for an hour and nobody's noticed me. Been sending messages.
No, we couldn't see you. We can't see anybody, but go ahead.
You couldn't, because when I tried to turn the video on, it says it.
Yeah, well, here you are.
Here
Here you are.
So learn how to use the equipment, huh? Okay. The revolution will not be televised. It will go the other way. Okay. So add that sentence to it. Now, I'm here in part to talk about what you can do about with the communications and in regards to demonstrations. And here's what I've just learned. Cell phone, for Christ's sake. That was my phone ringing.
Okay.
And that's what you use. Well, you can't see it there. It didn't focus. SMS, messages, text messages. That's the sort of lowest level of communication you get on phones. What we talked about with Tatanka and Sluggo was using QR codes to scan them and you get a URL, you get a web page. But there were problems with that because the opposition could put their own QR codes up purporting to be ours, and you get their web page. But if I don't know if you've been to an event or anything, when they say just dial this, send a null message or one word or something like that to the following number, and it's like 6 digits, and you'll get on our list. Well, you can do more than that. And I've been, like I say, I've researched this. There are services around, you pay the money and you get this service. You can set that up so that if a whole lot of people could dial a number, one number, and they get back the URL that they should go to. Now they have to choose to select that and go to that URL, and which is the web page you're presenting, but it's the way you can present your presentation in effect to them. And the cost is 3/4 of a cent per message. You think you could afford that?
Well, if we have 1 million people at a rally, how much is that?
Well, let's work it out. 3/4 of a cent means for 100 messages, it's 75 cents. I think. I'm not right there.
Yeah.
So $7.50 for 1,000, $75 for 10,000, $750 for 100,000. What does it get to? It says $7,500 for 1 million.
Let's do it.
It can be done.
Okay, so we need to get the details on that, Lee, so we can.
Yeah, so what I'd like to do is find somebody who can work with me on this. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not going to do the work. They're going to do the work, whoever volunteers. I'll provide connections, advice, and so forth. Because I got other work I got to do.
All right, so we will present you with a team of people who are under 40 or maybe even under 30, and we'll get the tech specs done on that. And we'll talk about it next week.
I'll be 80 in a month, so I'm worth 2 of them.
All right, good for you. Everybody will celebrate my 80th birthday, which will be New Year's Eve. So, okay, very good, Lee. And thank you for sticking with us. I know we promised you time, and it's always worth it with you. Again, people, this guy, he's the one who founded the Homebrew Club that gave birth to Silicon Valley. I'll call you after tomorrow. I'll call you tomorrow. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Okay, Dorothy Reich. Thank you for sticking with us. The great Dorothy Reich, one of our truly great organizers and activists who knew Tim Carpenter very well. There you go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the first time I spoke to Tim Carpenter, I called him and yelled at him because he had endorsed somebody in a local race, which he wasn't supposed to do. And we were supporting another candidate, and I called and I read him the Riot Act, and he said, I was just endorsing her personally, I'll make her take PDA off. And he was like, totally.
Well, let me tell you, folks, that as someone who has read the Riot Act by Dorothy a couple times, it's not something you really want to do.
So I went to a concert at the Santa Monica Civic Center in the early 70s. And it was supposed to be going to see Dr. John the Night Tripper. And we got there a little bit late, but there was a guy on stage in a white undershirt dancing all around and singing and everything, and the energy was incredible. And we went, who is that? Who is that? And it was Bruce Springsteen. And
Wow.
after that, Dr. John couldn't get the audience back after Bruce Springsteen. But
did you get Bruce's undershirt?
No, I was too far back. But I just want to say that Joel, back to Joel. I met Joel. I don't remember how I met him. I think it was mostly online. I know it was. And we got involved in this Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. I said Puerto Rico. You introduced us. After the Hurricane Maria, we both said, Puerto Rico has to go solar. And then this won't happen because every time there's a storm, all the power lines go down. And so we tried to work on that for about a year and a half. I spent a whole bunch of money and nothing came of it, of course, because the powers that be didn't want the people in Puerto Rico to have solar power and not make money off of them. So it's just, the whole thing was just disgusting. But anyway, Joel and I became friends, and he actually came out to my house to one of our events, and he was blown away. Kevin DeLeon, wrongly vilified, gave a speech, and Joel thought that Kevin should probably be president. So I hope that everybody digs deep, and we need Joel back, because at times like this, we need great organizers and inspirational people, and we can't do it. It's hard to do it without people like Joel, and especially without Joel himself. So I hope everybody comes through.
He'll be with us. We'll get him on the upside, and as so many other people who, and I'm glad the issue of depression came up. I mean, in this discussion, it's very important. And it's obviously a deeper syndrome involved with depression, but it's certainly a tangible illness, as I knew growing up. And Dorothy, you've been a great friend and organizer for Dave Saltman should meet Dorothy Wright and find a real organizer. Okay, thank you. Anything more, Dorothy?
I'm just trying to think. Just everybody needs to I get up every morning, I send out my emails. It almost makes me suicidal these days, but you have to do it. Knowledge is power. Don't shy away from watching the news. Read Down with Tyranny, Howie Klein's great publication, his great blog post, and Howie's very sick. Howie is fighting pancreatic cancer.
Oh my God.
But he's still working, and he's still posting, and really need to read his analysis of what's going on. It's really important. He's a brilliant man. And listen to Amy Goodman, painful as it is. You have to listen. You have to listen to Ian Masters. He has really insightful commentators on very important stuff that he's bringing that you don't get from other people.
Yeah, and Tom Hartman.
Who asked, by the way, Harvey, why isn't the Democratic Party, and why aren't we doing what the Republicans do? Why aren't the Democrats sending out challenge things to voters in red areas and trying to get them off the voting rolls? Why aren't we adapting some of the tactics that the Republicans used? Why aren't we gerrymandering?
Great question.
California just committed suicide with their citizens redistricting panel. Terrible.
Well, Dorothy, if we talk about all the bad things that are going on, we'll never get on to anything else. Let's start trying to get to some solutions if we can.
The solutions are that we have to fight back using the tactics that they're using. We're not fighting back we're giving up our right to gerrymander while they're
Thanks.
gerrymandering the hell out of
Okay.
everything.
Well,
Thanks,
listen,
Dorothy. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Lisa says she has some solutions. She's in the chat. We're going to go to 4:20, so it's only 14 more minutes. But this what a mind-boggling session. This is amazing. And Mimi, I hope your car hasn't turned over. You look like you're on your side. Okay. There you go. Thank God. Okay.
Real quick from Melissa. She's always got an upbeat
Melissa
statement.
and then Lisa.
I'm here, and thank you for having me. I'm here because we were talking about the power of music and the power of positive media. And I have cerebral palsy and I'm a wheelchair user. And if it wasn't for things like the No Nukes concert and all the things that John Lennon did with the Black Panthers, I wouldn't be going to school with an education because, of adapt and action and all the things that they did back in 1979. And
Melissa,
Melissa,
real quick, I just wanted to let you know that you're speaking to Sluggo Rossman, who was involved in the No Nukes effort. He keeps downplaying how involved he was. My understanding is that he tuned the guitar for Bruce Springsteen.
No, I can't tune it. I tried to learn a musical instrument and I couldn't do it until I was in shop in 9th grade, and I learned my instrument, which was a typewriter.
There you
I'm
go.
a great typer, but I cannot play an
where
instrument.
are the Pilgrims and everybody else that would fight against this? And when
They're
was
still
growing up?
around. Jackson Brown, Bonnie Raitt, they're James Taylor, they're still going. It's
I mean,
cool.
we need to be doing
Sam
what
Nash.
we need to be doing this through music. We can't gerrymander. We can't play the same game. We need to be doing the concerts like we used to do.
You're
You
literally
got that
singing
right.
to the choir.
Absolutely.
You're playing our tune, Melissa. Thank you for that reminder. You're
Okay,
absolutely wonderful.
thank you, Melissa.
I mean,
Lisa?
how do we organize this so that we
Well,
can
we're gonna talk about
that?
that again next week. This is an ongoing conversation. We had an amazing nano movement with Lee Felsenstein, who's the great godfather of Silicon Valley. So we're going to continue with this. Melissa, you're great. It's wonderful to have you with us. Lisa White, we're only going to be on another 12 minutes. Anybody else want to jump in? I will call on Mimi and Russell for a wrap up, and Salty if you want to jump in too. But Lisa White, go ahead, and Tatanka.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate this meeting regarding nukes, solutions for how we can organize and get together, and also some issues were brought to the table about depression, and something was brought up about the autism. I know people who have autism and they are very empathetic. They are highly empathetic. Each case is different. And I thank our lucky stars for the American for Disabilities Act that protects people with all disabilities, I included. And my solution that there was a talk regarding someone who had ECT. My solution when I received a video about electroshock therapy, which is torturous, which is a very tortured means of therapy. It has been used more than torture than therapy. I wrote to ACLU, Anthony Romero, and to see if a further act can be done regarding the no torture. That's something petitions do work. I've signed multiple petitions. They do come into law. One of the petitions that recently is on because we're concerned about who's in power right now is a No Kings Act.
Yes, I've seen that.
That is in government right now. It hasn't completely passed by majority vote, but I have included a petition that makes it gender neutral, hopefully gender neutral, and because it doesn't matter if it's a king or a queen or other, the behavior, the actions, they should be accountable to the law if they're against doing acts that are against the law or are fascist. So another thing that I have for a solution with gatherings that was spoken of earlier is I had gone to a People's March recently, and I had my petitions. and I had a board, which anybody can do this. If you find a petition that is of interest to stop nukes, which is also listed in the chat, to stop nukes, and organizations that are a part of stopping nukes, and also laws that need to be put in place, because one of the petitions that I had written the day of that is to hold police accountable to crime, to stopping fascism, to not participating in fascist policing. And they have a code of conduct that they need to follow that is not going to enable crimes against humanity.
Lisa, you gave us a whole lot to think about.
That's great. Wonderful.
A whole
Thank
lot of
you.
homework.
So
Thank you for all that.
we got to wrap. Lisa, thank you for that. Thank you, everybody. God, what an amazing session. Mimi, you've been in your car all that time and never once had to go to the restroom. That's fantastic. So let's do real quick, Tatanka, Russell, and then I want to give Mimi the last word. Is that all right with you, Mimi? Okay, good. Tatanka, go ahead quickly, and then Russell, and then Mimi, and then we'll rock and roll. We'll give our best to Joel. And we're going to do this again next week. This was astounding. What a great session. So go ahead, Tatanka, Russell, and Mimi.
I just want to honor one of my, the one who taught me organizing and who is a real close friend throughout my life, and her spirit. She will be 95 shortly. And the great Dolores Huerta is the one who championed and got Cesar and the whole farm worker movement to adopt Si Se Puede as their slogan. And if any of you were at the Hollywood, not the Hollywood Bowl, the Greek Theater, where we celebrated her 85th birthday, we had a film crew go to Barack Obama was the new president. And she had Dolores, because Hillary was very supportive of labor rights, was supporting him, but Barack really wanted to meet Dolores. So the first time he met Dolores, she looked up at him and she said, "You stole from me." And he went, "What? What are you trying to say?" He says, "Yes, we can." And then he laughed and he said, "Okay." So when the first thing that opened before Carlos Santana and all the Hollywood people came out was Barack Obama saying, "I must admit, I stole from this woman." You know, he made his mea culpa to open the show, and then welcomed her with her happy birthday. So Dolores is someone who knows, yes, we have no choice, we must, but it's a choice every day to not succumb to whatever we do, whatever addiction, whatever avoidance, whatever depression, whatever distraction. It's a choice, and she models that very well, and with her Dolores Huerta Foundation. So thank you, Dolores, and we'll have her on the show sometime if we want to.
And everybody, as we wrap up, we still have more than 70 people with us. I just want to remind everybody that Leonard Peltier and Julian Assange are both home with their families. I mean, what greater tribute to empathy and activism could we ever have? So there you go. Russell and then Mimi.
And thank you, Russell, for initiating this.
And
Tatanka, so good to be with you, bro.
Real quick, Tatanka, we would love to have Dolores on at any time.
Yeah. Okay, please. Go ahead, Russell, and then Mimi, you get the final word.
Harvey, thank you for this and all of the comments, just so much wisdom and really the framing of what's possible and what's required of us. And I think this could be our greatest moment. I feel I feel the potential. And I'm just going to close with a short poem, which is what I spend most of my life doing. And it's activism in its own way as well. So this poem's called What Wins Today? What wins today? Joy or suffering? Love or hate? Joy wins. Love wins. Push it. Intend it. Don't wait for it to come to you. Reject hate, even the smallest amount. Give love. Rain love. Gently, silently, loudly. Mosquito bite it if you have to. Bee sting it if need be. Rub it in, slap it on if you must. Cough it, sneeze it, shout it. And note, the fastest way around the world, feel it, joy. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Beautiful. Let's go win. Mimi.
Great. Yeah, I'm
All
just going to
down to you.
reiterate. Yeah,
Sideways,
I
Mimi.
guess. Oh, are we there? All right.
Yes.
I guess you've all noticed we've kind of been niched to death. It started before this millennium with the magazines that were just about New York or Self or anyway. There was no more Life magazine. There was no more national stuff. That's one reason why it's hard to get a concert together, because there's no more albums put out. There's no more CDs put out. It's all music online. Yes, I know they drop CDs, and I know kids who are starting their careers, they go around and sell their CDs. Everything is local. And I just keep thinking that at some point, gathering the local artists in your community and putting on a fundraiser is the way to go. And I would be willing to travel to any of those places. I don't have the time to organize the things, and we don't have Tim. But as opposed to working in DC on Capitol Hill and putting everything in there, I think we're back to the groundwork. And we can do it any old way we want with the people that we have in our city, whether it's labor unions or whoever it is that we know, and get together and do something at a microphone and sign people up and ask them for some money and give out stickers. That way we can get some people from other groups into our silo, but we can just spread the joy a little bit. It does take some money. I'm not sure how to do that. I spent up to 20 years raising money for PDA, but I just feel that's the way to go, because they can't touch that. They can't touch that. And until we have the balance of power, we're just shouting into the wind on Capitol Hill. We need to let our friends know we support them, all of our good legislators, but we need to know each other better. I wish I knew everybody on this call personally, or at least have met them at some event. And that's not happening anymore. And as I say, I'm getting up there, so I don't do that anymore. But I think that's where we're going to go in the future. And I'm wish I could say I'll do it, but I
Well,
can't.
listen, you did do it. You organized a beautiful event yesterday in this church in Santa Monica, and it was lovely. And this call has been really wonderful. It's great to have everybody together. And we talked about stuff I never expected to talk about, but there we are. That's what's on our minds. And listen, we will win. We have no choice but to win. And it's a good winning. So thank you, Steve and Mike, for engineering and co-convening. Mimi, you're the first person to talk to the whole group while on your side, and we.
I don't know what I'm doing.
There you
There.
are. Okay. All right, everybody. Listen, we love you
Okay,
all.
Don't
thanks.
forget the Joel link is just dropped in by Mike.
Joel, yeah, throw some money his way. He really uses it. Needs
And
it.
we're throwing energy his way. We are inspired now. Lee Felsenstein, thank you for sticking with it. Everybody, hopefully we'll get our pictures back one of these days. But in the meantime, it's 4:20. Everybody go out, toke up, and we will be back again next week. No nukes. We love you all. Thank you. Oh, and it will be available, by the way, YouTube, and it's available in the archive. If there are people, if you want to spread it around, it'll be by tomorrow. Steve is such a hard worker, and we'll put it up. It'll be grassrootsep.org. It will get live streamed. Well, I guess it's post live streamed at YouTube and available for you to send around. Thank you again. We'll see you next week, and no nukes, everybody.